What's good, people? It's Luke from the Melody app. We're here for another In the Loop session with the homie, Brennen Bryant, right here, director of A&R at Avex Publishing. And Brennen, I appreciate you for joining us today.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me.
For sure. You got your start early in the game, working with Murda Beatz, which is something all producers, everybody knows Murda for sure. So I'd love to kind of give us a little bit of background and history of kind of like how you got your foot in the door and what was the point where you got from where you were started and then got you to working with Murda.
I went to USC, so my main goal when I went there was to kind of work in the music industry. And I wanted to figure out like what's gonna be the way to get me in the door, because that's like the first step for anybody, right?
Yeah.
So the first thing I did was I just networked around campus. I was trying to figure out like, okay, how am I gonna be able to work in this industry that's like impossible to enter for someone who like doesn't have any connections? Like, I just go to school, like I didn't know anybody, right? So, you know, my junior year, they had a panel where a bunch of managers were speaking, and it was like Jamil Davis, Matt Bowerschmidt, David Dan, Tyler Henry. So I was like, I gotta be at this panel. And it turns out I was very sick that day. So I was like, am I gonna stay home or am I gonna go to this panel? But I knew that if I stayed home, like nothing was gonna change for my situation, and it was probably gonna be me squandering another opportunity.
For sure.
So I was like, oh, okay, I gotta go to this panel. So I ended up going to that panel, sat through it. I was like suffering the whole time, but I was like, I gotta make this worth it. So I went up, I talked to Tyler Henry, and I actually got his email, and then like a month passed and I ended up emailing him, and I worked for him for a couple days, and that's like my brother now, so I'm very grateful for like the opportunity he gave me. But during that panel, I followed Jamil, and Jamil posted on his Instagram, and he was like, oh, I need help at this party that I'm throwing for post Coachella. He does like an annual party at Delilah. So I ended up working that party from like 3 p.m. till 4 in the morning. And I was the only one who was like picking shit up at the end and like just really trying to get my job. Like,
taking initiative.
Yeah, exactly. So while I was like taking these fake plants off the wall, he was like, that's how you get a fucking job. And I was like, damn, did I just get this job? And he happened to fire his assistant that night. So the way it all happened is crazy. So the next day, the next day he hits me, he goes, do you want to do an interview? So I end up going in for the interview. He calls me after, he's like, you got the job. So ended up working for him during my junior summer, which is only 3 months, but like when I look back, it feels like it was so long, because I was literally working like every day, and we were just doing crazy stuff, like going to meetings, meeting like the biggest people in music. I have like my contacts during that time were like crazy. So I'm so grateful for him and the opportunity that he gave me. And then, you know, around the time when school was coming back around, I was like, I don't know if I can do this while I'm in school still, because you need a full-time assistant. And I'm like, can I do it part-time? He's just like, I really need a full-time assistant. So that was unfortunate, because like I had worked this whole time to get to this opportunity, and now I gotta kind of restart and figure some other shit out. So I ended up quitting. To this day, he's always like, oh, you had crocodile tears, because like I was crying when I told him, because I was like so emotional about it. And I was like, no, bro, that was real. So I stopped working for him, and then when I went back for my final year at USC, I got a call from Cory Litwin, who's Murda Beatz' manager, and he was like, hey, I heard you're not working for Jamil anymore. Do you want to work part-time for me?
But and Cory, how did Cory hear about you? Through Jamil?
So that was I was on tour with G-Eazy for the Endless Summer Tour with Jamil, and Murda was on that tour. So I actually met Cory
on tour.
Well, I met him actually at Tyler's the day that I went to interview with Tyler. But like I got to know him on that tour. You know what I mean? So like the first introduction was with Tyler, but like the tour was really how I got to know him. And Murda. You know, funny story meeting Murda, I actually met him playing dice. So like we were playing dice, and like that's how I met Murda. So that's funny. So he fucked with me from that point on. And then Cory called me, he's like, hey, we liked you on tour, like we'd love to just have you do like admin stuff, because he already had an assistant. So ended up working for him, started off doing just admin work, and then I slowly became Murda's tour manager. And then, from there, ended up signing my first client and working with them for 5 years. So, it's a crazy journey with them.
That's what it takes, perseverance and to push through no matter what. Don't let nothing stop you. If you're sick, whatever, tired, you still gotta get up and make it happen. So
right, and I think in life there's these fork moments where it's like if you go right, your life is gonna have something totally different happen than if you go left.
Yep.
And both options might be good options,
Uh-huh.
but one's gonna be the better for your future or what you want.
From working with Murda, then you got hired, and now you're the director of A&R
Yes.
at Avex Publishing.
Yes.
That's what you do now. So, as a director of A&R, what is it that you look for in a artist or a producer or a songwriter, like in order to consider like signing them?
Obviously, we're in the music business, so there's the aspect of this person needs to have a hit, or they're making a consistent revenue on the publishing side, just to make it worth it signing to the company. That was my first goal when I went into Avex. I was like, the first thing I need to sign, I have to make sure is like making something.
Yeah, for sure.
And then I can branch off into like things that I'm more passionate about that could make money in the future.
Yep.
So for example, my first signing is DJ Smallz. We just signed him. He did the Everybody record by Nicki Minaj.
Okay, congrats.
And that was #1 on urban and rhythmic radio. I think it was like, I peaked at top 13 or number 13 to top 40 radio.
Yep.
So when things are on radio and moving, like that's when a lot of income is being generated.
Yep.
The song also almost has 100 million streams.
Okay.
So the first thing I wanted to do was find someone that's making money, but I'm still very passionate about finding people that are talented.
Yeah.
So, and DJ Smallz is beyond talented, but he has something. There's so many talented people that don't have anything yet.
For sure.
So for example, like my first client, Finesse, he didn't have anything going on. Like he was a mechanic. He wanted to be a big producer.
Yep.
And we ended up building him up. He made Yonaguni. He has a single as an artist that has 100 million streams from Italy. So, you know, finding people like that who don't have anything, just raw talent, and being able to like transform that into giving them a record where they get in Everybody or a Yonaguni, like that's my next step.
Gotcha.
So just someone who like is grinding all the time, because I don't want someone that's not working as hard as me or like harder than me.
For sure.
And someone who has that raw talent and is doing something differently.
Got it.
You know? And I think for upcoming producers, like your goal shouldn't be like, oh, I want to get a publishing deal. Like your goal should definitely be, I need a manager, I need a team.
Yep.
And then build out your universe and then get that to a point where it's like, okay, now we need someone to help even more. Because the publisher should actually be another extension of your team. A lot of publishers, like, you know, sometimes they'll just sign things and then shelf them for the market share. That's just like how it works. Yeah. But you know, a company like Avex that I work at, we're very focused on development and very focused on like signing things and making sure that they're we're getting the sessions in, like we're connecting them with the right people. Like I put Smallz on text with people all the time.
Yep.
Like a lot of our guys I'll do that with, and like we'll fill out calendars for them whenever they're in town or whenever they have sessions, so they're booked out like a month in advance.
Got it.
So we're just an extension of the management team to help build your catalog a little bit more.
Yep.
To exploit the copyright. That's the whole reason for a publisher, is the exploitation of copyright. That's like why they were created.
For sure.
So yeah, my advice for upcoming producers isn't like, yo, I need a publishing deal. Like that should be the goal. That's every producer's goal at the end of the day, is like, let me get a publishing deal so I can have an income to survive on. But you have to build a team first and get a record moving before you get that.
What are some things Murda did that helped him reach the level of success that he's at today that you observed while you were working with him?
There's a piece of it that he did that I wasn't around for, because I came into his world and universe after he hit the big songs and everything like that. But something that he talks about in a lot of his interviews and things that, you know, he's very proud of that he used to do is be very active on socials. And like reach out to people. He would tell producers like, oh, you have to reach out to these artists or other producers, or figure out who's this person's friend, or like just figure out some sort of finesse to where you can get yourself in that position. And using socials is a good way to do that, especially Instagram. And I'll do that too, like for managers and meeting new A&Rs and like connecting with people. Like everyone cares about social clout nowadays, and it's not something that I really care about, but it's so important, and we have to use our tools to help get us to that next level. So as a producer, you should be going out to events, you should be linking with people on socials, and that's something that Murda was doing a lot of in his early career, and that's how he got working with the Migos and like all these different people. And then from what I seen when I was there, I think one of his biggest strengths is just working with an artist and knowing what they want and being able to like translate that into a beat. So like when he's in the sessions, keep in mind like, okay, this is the universe that the artist wants to build out. How can I make this a little bit different so that I'm putting my sauce on it
Yeah.
and giving that to them too. Giving
what
them
they
their
have.
vibe, but like bringing them
His
into
way.
Murda's world. Yeah, and that's something like I respect the most out of him for, is being able to do that. Like, you know, with Chloe Bailey, like Have Mercy, like bringing her sound into his universe, giving it that like trap 808 feel, but that rhythmic up-tempo R&B still that she has. And that's how they made that hit, you know what I mean? Or like Drake's Nice for What, like having that up-tempo Drake pop vibe, but also having like the Murda sounds that he uses in those beats.
Now, as far as like producers, do you think the role of producer is underrated in shaping the sound? You think so?
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's coming to light a little bit more for sure. Like, you know, the big superhero producers like the Murdas and the Metros and the Wheezys, I think paved the way for that.
Yep.
Obviously like Dr. Dre's and stuff like that. But even back then, like, you know, that was like the first instance of us having like a producer artist, like, or one of them, you know, like the Dr. Dre's, Pharrell's and Kanye's, like that type of vibe. And now it's kind of translating to like, you know, Murda has 2 million Instagram followers, and like Metro has all these millions of Spotify monthlies, and like just like all these producers kind of transitioning into that artist phase, or just that, you know, mogul / like influencer type vibe, to where I think we're getting more recognition for producers and songwriters. Especially songwriters. I think now we're getting to a place where people are feeling comfortable giving songwriters points. Because they understand like how hard it is to make money as a songwriter. It's hard to make money in this music industry. Like people don't understand, like, especially in publishing, like there's not that much money in it unless you have radio records or like massive
singles.
songs.
You gotta have the singles.
Radio or album cuts aren't doing it. Like, if
for
you
sure.
have 50% of an album cut, it doesn't matter. I want 5% of a radio single.
In terms of producers that are now becoming like more recognized, you think a big part of that is, you know, the co-release thing that's kind of happening, where producers are actually being listed along with the artists, where it's like, you know, I know Hit Boy has that a lot, and other producers as well. So,
He's starting to do that. Murda does it now.
Where like they're kind of not demanding that, but saying like, hey, you got to put us on that same plane as the artist as well.
I think there's only certain producers that can do that because they have that swag, that energy. They have big records, obviously, that they're able to kind of do that for. Not every producer can just like put out a project with artists like that. So it kind of takes time to build to that. It's possible for any producer. Especially if you are social, if you are active on Instagram, if you're out in the mix, like if you're acting like an artist, yes, you're gonna be able to do that. But if you're more of a behind the scenes producer, it's probably gonna be a little harder.
For you, like, how can producers actually get their beats to an A&R when they really want to get them heard? Like, what do you think is like the best way to get your beats to the A&R, or get them directly to the artist if possible?
I think it's important to recognize like what that person is attached to and working on. So like if it's somebody's direct A&R, then craft beats around that artist and be like, hey, I made a pack specifically for XYZ. I'd love for you to hear it. Or even ask them to go to lunch or something. Like, don't even start with the pack thing, because they're always getting hit for packs. So it's like, I think being different is gonna help out the most. Like, and don't send the, yo, check this out. Like, don't do that. Like, don't be that person, bro. I get that all the time, and it's just like, why would you market yourself? If you take yourself seriously, why would you market yourself in that way? Yo, check this out. Or would love for you to listen. Like, no, like, give me like a reason why you're sending this and like why you think I should listen.
Figure out a way to cut through. I manage producer Corbett, and
shout out Corbett.
Yeah, for sure. Shout out Corbett. And we got a deal. He's with Sony, and the way that kind of started is I sent Big John a letter through FedEx.
See,
nobody sends a letter anymore. So I FedEx Big John a letter, and he got the letter, and his assistant reached out like 2 months later and said, Big John wants to meet you. And that was the entry of like how we got in the front of the door, and, you know, led to the deal. So definitely do what you can to stand out and go the extra mile, you know, and build that relationship, that rapport, like you said. Take somebody out to lunch, bro. Spend some bread, you know, take somebody out for coffee, dessert, dinner, whatever. But like, make it personable.
Yeah, and I think that's what
you can.
Right. I think that's what makes the music industry and entertainment in general so interesting, is because there's not one route to make it. If you want to work in music, there is no, this is what you got to do. It's like, this is what you can try. But like, that might not work.
And you got to try something
And then
else.
you got to try this. And then if that doesn't work, then you try this. And then that might not work, so you got to try that. And then if that doesn't work, you try that. You know what I mean? So
multiple
I think
ways to get in.
Exactly.
You got to figure out what works for you, though. Obviously, we know Murda Beatz is extremely legendary. Now, what do you think about Murda's sound that helped him solidify legendary status as a producer in terms of his sound?
Yeah, I think as far as his sound goes, he is able to make sure his drums always sound perfect.
Got it.
Like, I'll listen to beats and I'm like, the choice of the sounds like that they chose, whether it's the kick or the hat or the snare, it just doesn't work. Like, and people, it's so hard to explain to people like what's wrong with the beat.
Yep.
Other than to be like, it just doesn't sound good. Like,
Yeah.
it's so hard for me, but I'll listen to Murda's drums and like he picks his sound. He's so particular about his sounds and like
Sound selection.
his sound packs. Yeah, so like when we did our splice kits and, you know, I would help him like sit down and be like, okay, we got to have this many snares, this many hats, whatever. He's very particular in like going through and like making things, changing things, whatever.
Yep.
And that's what I respect about him a lot, is his sound selection is so like perfect. And he's very, very, very particular with that. So I think, you know, up and coming producers have to make sure that, you know, you're not just focused on the drum rhythm and like how it sounds with the melody, like focus on the drum sounds too. Because when I hear like bad sounding claps or like snares or like kicks or whatever, it just ruins the beat.
How do you go about finding something like a new artist, a new producer to bring onto the roster when they don't have the catalog, the hits? Like, how do you find that person?
I think it just comes down to talent, and it's just a matter of like finding something that I'm excited and passionate about.
And how do you, like, how do you find that in terms of like, is it something where some people maybe DMing you and you randomly click on somebody emailed you or sent you through a DM, or is it referral? Like, yo, Brennen, yo, you got to check this shit out. Like, the homie is crazy. Or like, what are the ways that you kind of go about finding it in that sense?
Okay, got you. I think it's all the above. I'll always listen to stuff that people send me. 90% of it isn't good, to be honest. That's just how it goes. Because the 10% is like, whenever I sign something, I'm putting my name behind it. And that means a lot to me. So it's like, yeah, it might be good to somebody else, but it's not great. Like, I need something that's great. And the things that I've signed are proving to be great. You know what I mean? So just little things like that. And then obviously going through Spotify credits. I try to go through the credits every Thursday and just like on the big stuff to be like, oh, who's produced this across genres. Like, I just went through Ariana Grande's last night. She like dropped her project, which is really fire. So just like going through shit like that and like seeing like who produced it and then going to their Instagram, seeing what else they produced. And if I fuck with it enough, to be DMing them and be like, hey, I would love to figure something out and like send me a pack, or like, are you in LA? Let's link up, like little things like that. And that's how I found some people in the past. But Finesse was one of those people who just DM'd me beats, and I went through the beats and I was like, these are incredible. And it was just like easy.
Tell us a crazy studio experience that you've been a part of.
As far as like crazy, I think I'll just say the coolest room that I feel like I've been in, it was Murda, Take Heath, and PNB Rock, rest in peace. And I think that was like year 2 of my career, or 2.5 or something like that. And I just felt like, I was like, damn, this is what I worked so hard for. Like, some people would freak out to be in this room, you know what I mean? And I wasn't freaking out or anything, but I was just so grateful to be sitting with Murda, obviously our client, Take Heath, who's really nice and chill and a vibe and is one of the best producers out there, and the late great PNB Rock. You know, so it was just crazy to be in that room and in that experience. For sure. And then the days with Murda and Quavo and like shit like that, and being there with like him and watching Quavo work, like little shit like that, like just seeing all these like crazy people work in front of you is kind of like, am I really here? I think another crazy one was I was with Murda and Kid Laroi back when Kid Laroi was like 15 or something.
Wow.
And like, I'll never forget that experience, because I chopped it up with him and like, I was like, this kid is 15, bro. He's talking about like girls topping him up and like all this crazy shit, and like he's insane melodies, like lyrics, and he's 15. I'm like, bro, you're gonna be the biggest thing ever. And he turned out to be one of the biggest things ever. So
what's some words of wisdom or advice you would give to them, maybe somebody who's at the crib in the bedroom cooking up, seeing where you're at, and obviously Murda and all those producers you named, you've been around, to kind of give them some kind of piece of advice or words of wisdom you could say, you know, to keep them inspired?
Number one, make sure you're always connecting with new people. You definitely want to build your network as much as possible, especially if you're not in LA. You want to be able to like reach out to people, network, etc. And then number 2, just keep learning from your mistakes. That's like the biggest thing I could say, because for me, I'm an only child. My parents are teachers. and I think I relied on myself a lot.
Yep.
Because of the stuff they taught me, and like I felt like a lot of my mistakes I was able to kind of work through myself. And sometimes that's not the best thing. Sometimes you need to talk through them and things like that.
Yep.
But you know, if you come with a situation and like, let's say you work in a session and for whatever reason the session doesn't go well, learn from that. How can I be better? How can I do better in the next session? Don't worry about it. Like, shake it off. It's like putting up shots in the gym. Like, you miss a shot, whatever, just move on to the next one.
Yeah.
And if you keep doing that consistently over time, you're gonna be great. Because if you go back and listen to like all these big artists' first songs, some of them are terrible. Like, some of them, obviously they had just natural born talent, their first song was amazing, whatever, but a lot of them are really bad. So it's like, how does a person who's that bad go to be a Drake? Like, Drake's first shit, like he was on Degrassi, and like the rap he did was like pretty bad from what I remember. Now he's the biggest artist in the world, like just shit like that. So it's like, how can you go from being not that good to really good? And it's all just from working hard. So I think my biggest advice is to never give up. I know, as cliche as that sounds. But
still,
if you look back on all the artists who never gave up, they're the biggest artists in the world. So there's got to be some truth to it.
For sure. Appreciate y'all joining us on another episode of In the Loop from the Melody app. Once again, Brennen Bryant. Go check him out on the socials, all right? Peace.
I'm Liddell.
Yeah.
My G.
My guy.
Appreciate you.
Yeah.